Hello guys, well, Ashkonda here, you're listening to Honey at Home, and I'm back. And I'm back with some trip stories for you from Catalonia. So what actually happened, my company decided to organize a team retreat in Barcelona, so everybody was so pumped up and excited, like, hey, Barca, Spain, warm weather, probably we're going to the beach, we're gonna take some sandbathing, got a big tent, maybe a bunch of sangrias and all the things. Well, it didn't turn out what everyone expected, but in any case, it still was exciting. So I think that we actually end up going there at the beginning of May. We went for no more than 5 days, and obviously, on such a team gathering like this, it's not always you only have a time for yourself to explore the city in which you were living in or whatever. So that's why I wouldn't say that this kind of trip is something that I usually enjoy doing and something that I tried to make before, like in the Copenhagen. But I still think that I have something to share with you. Even though we arrived at Barcelona airport, we actually were leaving 1 hour drive from there. And there's nothing bad about that. And maybe to some extent is actually good. We were living in kind of isolated space, isolated from bigger cities, from, I don't know, noise and exhaustion of the big city. We were living in a small town called Piera, which is also somewhere closer to the mountains. So if you ever been to Spain or to Barcelona or to Catalonia, you may kind of imagine that it's pretty much hilly. There were a bunch of mountains. It's also one of the eastern part of Pyrenees. And yeah, the nature is definitely completely different from our flat Netherlands. The scenery is great, and you actually driving in the car, you look at these mountains, hills, and you enjoy the every moment you see the nature. We stayed at the villa with the pool, with quite a big territory. Even though we were about 10, 11 people, I think there always can be a space where you can just be by yourself if you ever needed. I don't think I ever required such a thing for myself. But when it's pretty spacious and you can get somewhere to, let's say, take a call or whatever, it's pretty nice. I think I was pretty much liked about our location, even though on that one morning when we actually went out to the city to get some chocolate croissants, well, I basically checked it out, and it only took me 15 minutes to see what is actually happening, what's the main street here, and how does it look like. And well, it looked fine. I think for such a small town, it's pretty good. Probably both luckily and a bit of unfortunate was that the weather wasn't as hot as it could have been. That's why we didn't really spend any time at seaside. Probably not that's why, but we didn't spend any time at seaside because we were also living 1 hour from the actual sea, and this is kind of good. Even though we kind of had a pool, so in any way, if the weather was appropriate, we always could have just gone jump in the pool, enjoy ourselves. Didn't happen. We knew what kind of to expect. Everybody obviously was prepared because, come on, we live in the 21st century when everybody has the internet. We always can see the forecast, so we all knew what's going to happen. We always knew in advance that we couldn't live in the Barca. That's why it made it a bit more exciting in some of sense. Because for me, it was the second time in Barcelona, or the day when we actually arrived to Barcelona. And what can I say? Barca itself for me didn't really change. It was really fun because before I was exploring the city with the underground because I also wasn't really by myself, and I probably wasn't that big of a fan before of like walking around and stuff. And suddenly I was younger. Suddenly I was just 18 when first I came. Yeah, it was 5 years ago, maybe. Yeah, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. 6 years ago. And I wasn't really exploring it by myself because I also was a bit of not afraid per se, but you know, I didn't want to go alone at that point of time. I think now I'm way more independent in this sort of a sense, and if I just want to go to some city, I'll just go. But back then, I just wanted to stay with my group of 2 more people in it. So we walked around and we actually visited some other spaces rather than this time, so that was cool. So our all bike trip, it started near some sort of a market in Barcelona, and then we just drove, we biked around. It was like a bike tour, that's why we had a great chance to see a bunch of places. And for me, it was about 70% of what I saw during this bike tour I actually seen last time. So it was exciting in the sense that I actually can see those spaces again and I can recognize them, which I kinda liked. So I think we've been to the hospital where the Gaudi arrived when he actually had an accident and died in this accident. And so after this, we went to the harbor, basically. We actually were at the same space, at the same place where we've been last time when we've been there, and we worked on the beach. It was way busier this time because before I went in December and this time was May, so obviously there have been way more tourists. In most of the countries, you have more of a holidays happening in May, exactly. So all people are taking breaks, and yeah, we've seen the seaside, we've seen the harbor and embankment, and then we went to the big park with a beautiful fountain. Had a bunch of ice creams, and then we went all the way to Sagrada Familia because it was on the other side of the city. So we went there, we saw it. Everybody was excited, obviously, about that. I think last time when I was here, it was way less finished than it is now. I also probably only seen it from one side, so I haven't ever seen the other, and this time we actually came from the other side, which was funny. And after this, we basically drew all the way back to where we rented the bike, so we haven't really seen too much of a spots. We didn't have too much stops, but still was exciting to just bike around, I had pretty cool bike. There was another day when we went to, I don't know, is it like nature reserve? It's like there's been a bunch of waterfalls in the mountains, and we took different trails to get there, and it was both exciting, just spice it up with a bit of adrenaline, and it wasn't scary per se, but it was, it wasn't 100% safe. Even though there were like ropes, so we actually need to get down with the ropes, to get up with ropes, to make it easier. And the waterfalls per se, it wasn't that exciting. I wouldn't say that they looked something special, but the whole canyon kind of thing, and yeah, it was just always good to just wander in the nature, and that was a bit of cool. So if you ever decided to go to Barcelona or be somewhere around there, just go to the nature. Nature is beautiful there, and if you'll see the wild rosemary being here and there. There also was quite a funny field of poppy flowers, and that was a bit sketchy because usually from poppy seeds they make the opium and all this other stuff, drugs. Yeah, and the nature per se is just peaceful. You really feel peaceful. It wasn't busy, it was only us. It was like, even though we were quite a big group, it felt great that we haven't met any other people there when we were out there. And that was really kind of rewarding because, obviously, people been there around, luckily not this time. And apparently it all turned out really well. I enjoyed that one. It was a bit of a physical activity as well. And on the last day before we all left, we went to Montserrat. Montserrat is also a small town, and near the small town there is the monastery. And so in this monastery, it's actually on top or almost on top of the mountain, and there are several mountains. And it really felt really touristy. Like, obviously, all the things are all these temples, monasteries, churches. A lot of them now in Europe are mostly used to attract tourists to certain places. And they kind of loosen up this feel of some kind of a religious part where some kind of a sanctuary or whatever, where people go in order to remove their griefs and feel better again. I wouldn't say that you will feel something in Montserrat, because now it's so touristy that besides the building itself, which doesn't look as exciting, honestly, doesn't look as exciting inside. It's your good old European architecture, Catholic monastery inside. Just imagine any of them. It was cool that they actually allow you to go on a higher floor, because usually this is something that they don't allow tourists. But in Spain, they say, hey, just go for it, guy. You already paid for the ticket. So we kind of walked through. We went to see this kind of a small statue of Saint Mary with Jesus. And it was obviously under the window, protection glass, whatever. And then you also can look what the main priest who's making the speech in front of the people. I don't know whether they're actually doing it from the higher floor, but you actually had a great view on the whole of the building. So it actually felt quite exciting. So then you walk out and you are back. So they also decided to put a lot of art stuff in it. So besides just art that was related to kind of religious paintings, whatever icons, they also added some of the more contemporary stuff, and also something more of a classical realism. That's what they actually did. Also, there was another part with smaller museum, but as far as I understood, it wasn't really interesting. But I didn't make it because we went, the part of the team went there like 1 minute before they accept the last group to go for it, and apparently we didn't make it, the most of us. But I don't think I lost anything because other guys also went back after 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So I think the best part of the Montserrat again was the view. The view was incredible. Like, you can get there by funicular, or there is like a railroad also up to there. And it's actually, I think it's about 1 kilometer above sea level. So it's not that high. It doesn't feel that high, right? Like when you say it, but it's actually pretty high, and you look at the valley, and it feels so good to see all this beautiful nature still being out there. And you're looking at it from the top with a kind of eagle view, So it actually does feel great. Barcelona or Catalonia, I would say in this particular case, because it wasn't only in Barcelona this time, otherwise I would have explored it a bit differently. I think the overall trip was interesting, and if you've ever been to Barcelona already and you have more days of your stay, definitely just try to explore something outside of the city, and even go into some weird place like this Piera town, and you'll definitely be rewarded with seeing something not really conventional, where people don't usually go. And even though in Piera there was even a castle, but it doesn't seem pretty popular because there weren't like a lot of tourists or whatever. But like we were living right next to some sort of a castle. And honestly, now I feel a bit bad because I spent 5 days in this villa and never bothered myself to go out and at least take one picture of this castle. I hope it didn't worse it, but yeah, maybe it did. Who knows? It means that I'll need to go to Piera again, maybe to make the whole video dedicated. No, of course not, I'm joking. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. It's been quite a while since the last time I made a video. I'll try to keep it real, to keep it better, more frequent, and thank you all. Bye.